Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of After Action Reports. My name is Joshua Joshi Howard, and today we're going to be talking about the most recent GT that I played at, which is called Make War, Not Love. This one took place at the Wizard's Keep in Kent, Washington, and I took Combined Arms Guard to this one, and we'll go ahead and talk about how this event actually went down. Before we go too far, I do want to give a big shout out to Wizards Keep and the Deep Strike Gang, who were the people who were hosting and running this event. They had all the good terrain set up, everything went very smoothly, and overall, like the event was just it just went well. They had like a food truck out back. There was plenty of opportunities to just like go get food and everything that you needed. So, very cool place. It's well stocked if you're looking for Warhammer stuff. So if you're in the area, make sure you check it out. So, so talking about this event a little bit, one of the big things about this is it was a relatively small GT as far as things actually go. There was only 20 players who actually ended up playing. I know that there were like a dozen drops or something that ended up happening throughout the course of like the last week leading up to this event. So we were expecting it to be like close to 30, but because so many people dropped towards the end, we actually only had 20 players. Which, considering the size of the venue, might have worked out for the best because it was you were very close between you and like the people who were on tables next to you. So we were very cozy the entire time. However, with only 20 players, it was a very strong event ultimately. We had 5 of the 20 players who were above 1600, 4 of those were above 1700, and 2 of those were above 1800. So it was a very strong event overall. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of what I was thinking as I went into this event was this one for me was kind of my for fun GT in some ways. I was not planning to go into this one with the same expectations as some of the other ones. I did not put as much prep into this one. And one of the reasons for that is the mission pack for this event was not what I was expecting. After talking to the TO, what they ended up doing was they copied the mission pack, or a lot of the missions that were going to the Edmonton Open, the one that Games Workshop recently ran in Canada, which had some odd missions in it. And they included Sweeping Engagement, which is a layout that I have never played on before this event, and Supply Drop and layouts 3 and 5. I've played layout 3 like a couple of times, but I have just not touched layout 5 at all this edition. So a couple of first times for me, and just kind of figuring it out as we went along. There's also the new layout 8 at this event. So I didn't do as much prep for this event as I did for a lot of other ones, and there was a lot of strong players. So I was going in with the idea of I'm hoping to go 3-2-4-1, and then we'll see what actually happens, who I end up pairing into, and where we go from there. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the list that I actually took to this event. And it is not a list that is really quite my style. In a lot of ways, this is not the way I normally like to run my Combined Arms Guard. I've spoken a lot at length about how there is tanks and midboard, and then midboard and tanks. And this one is about as far skewed towards the tanks part of the combined arms spectrum of what you can do, and much less midboard than what you would generally expect. I was using my tanks a lot as the midboard in a lot of the games. But let's go ahead and take a look at what I actually brought to this event. So of course I was playing Combined Arms Guard. I had 2 Cadian command squads. One of them had an Ogryn Bodyguard. The other one was joined to Ursula Creed and 10 Cadian shock troops. I had a Rogal Dorn commander with the Grand Strategist enhancement. 1 Taurox. 1 unit of Death Riders, 1 Hellhound with a Multi-Melta, 2 Leman Russ battle tanks, 1 Exterminator, and then 3 Leman Russ Vanquishers, a Scout Sentinel, and 1 unit of Tempestuous Aquilons. So overall, I thought this list was pretty darn good. To just go ahead and talk about why I brought this, knowing that day 2 was going to be layouts 3 and 5 on Sweeping Engagement, you can shoot your opponent's home objective on turn 1 if you go first, which means that you can't really hide a whole lot. So you just gotta be ready to go first and win the shootout and hopefully kill enough of your opponent's anti-tank on the first turn that they can't kill your tanks back. And to kind of go back to all the players that are coming to this one, there was one other player who I believe ended up dropping, but Ken Bush brought Bringers of Flame Sisters, like triple Immolator, triple Castigator, Triumph, Morvenval. Timothy Grant was playing Montcalm Vehicle Spam, I think it was like triple Skyray. And then there was one more player, whose name I don't remember, who ended up dropping from the event, who was also planning to bring a very similar thing. So of the, there's supposed to be 6 players above 1600, and 4 of them were bringing like these degenerate whole spam lists. The only two that weren't were James Lee and Donald Plummer, who were playing Blood Angels, like MSU Liberator Assault Group, and Donald Plummer, who was playing, he had like 3 bloat drone missile launcher guys, and then the rest of it was just fairly normal Death Guard stuff with Mortarion. But I just set myself up. I'm going to be prepared for the shootout. Worst case scenario, we roll off, and if I go first, I'm in a very good spot to win on these maps. If I go second, well, I still have a chance because Leman Russes are just so durable. That said, I think a couple of changes that you could consider making to this list if you were to try and play it yourself. The core of tanks is, if you are trying to play this style, you can't really adjust. It's the Rogal Dorn, 2 battle tanks, an Exterminator, a Hellhound, is the core of just about every combined arms list, in my opinion. And then you have the triple Vanquisher that also, for like this open board style, like that is all core. You can't really change that. Then you have the Ursula Creed brick. And so after that, you only have like 300-ish points of other stuff. Then Tempestus Aquilons were really good, really like that. The Scout Sentinel was fine. This could probably be this, and the Taurox could probably be 2 units of Cadian, and you wouldn't really feel the difference that much. The Death Riders were really good, and the Cadian Command Squad of the Ogryn Bodyguard was also good. The Cadian Command Squad was also a thing that went in the Taurox, and this was a recommendation from David Purcell, where it's just like, if you do not roll high enough on your advance with the Cadian Command Squad, they don't always make it to your natural expansion objective, because sometimes you just don't roll that 3, and sometimes you don't have something touching the objective, which can be a problem with the Cadian Command Squad sometimes. But anyway, this is pretty close to, I think there are like a couple small changes that you could choose to make, but overall I think this is pretty close if I were to play this tournament again. Yeah, I think that's about the only thing, is maybe you put a couple of Cadian in instead of the Taurox and the Scout Sentinel, but overall, it's about the same. Whichever one you prefer is going to be fine. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and start talking about our first game. So the first game, I ended up playing up against Nicholas and his Chaos Demons Demonic Incursion. And this one was Big Demons Demonic Incursion. He had Bellicor, a Bloodthirster with, I don't know what this enhancement is. I think it makes them do more damage. Great and Clean one with the 4 Feel No Pain enhancement, Kairos Fate Weaver, Scarbrand, 1 unit of 3 Nurglings, 1 unit of Plague Bearers, 2 individual Beasts of Nurgle, and then 2 units of Fleshhounds. And this one, to be honest, when I look at this, it's very, very interesting to potentially go fixed up against this army, because this is just not enough stuff to like really play the board for more than like 1 or 2 turns, and then I will kill all of that, and then Nick is going to have to start bringing out all of this. And I think Bellicor and the Great and Clean one and Kairos, I think 3 of these overall have more than 20 wounds, so they're each 6 points for Bring It Down, and they're also 4 points for Assassination. So if I kill all of this, it's 20 points on Assassination, and more than 20 points on Bring It Down. If I kill like 3 of them, I get Bring It Down, or 18 points for Bring It Down. And then also, because it's the new chapter approved, if I fall behind because I'm not killing things right away, I will get access to Challenger cards in order to keep myself competitive. Okay, so we ended up playing this one on Mission D, which is Scorched Earth and Tipping Point. And one of the big things about this one is it's kind of hard with my army to be actively denying primary. I don't have the same amount of OC as a lot of other Combined Arms Guard lists will have. However, my list is very violent, and this is a board that is fairly open, so it's very hard just down in the middle objective. It's not that hard to hide something small, like in the corner here, like a Beast of Nurgle or something can reasonably hide there and be hard to shoot. But I am going to be a little bit better at doing most secondaries than my opponent, because I just have enough things to screen out my entire backfield. I will have center board control unless Nicholas full shoves on me. And to be entirely honest, this was not much of a game. This game ended fairly early on. So what happened in this one that made it such a non-game is Nicholas went first, and as demons, he basically just put like a Beast of Nurgle on here, his Plague Bearers were spread out something in here. He had another beast here, and Be'lakor was hanging out with like Kairos. And I think the Bloodthirster started off the board. I don't remember exactly. But I had a Scout Sentinel that deployed around here, and then it just moved to here where we're still wholly within. And I don't remember if it was possible to be or not, but I don't remember if it was this game where I was like, I'm going to put it within 6 of the center for air denial purposes. But regardless, I ended up putting it wholly within this terrain piece such that I'll still get cover against his very little shooting. And this game came down to the fact that Nicholas just tried to play this game way too fast. So in his turn 1, Kairos came out this way to around here and shot at the Scout Sentinel, and I think it did 1 or 2 damage. Cool. And that was basically his entire turn 1. He got recover assets for 3 points and burned through 2 objectives marked for death and overwhelming force. So he was not in a super exciting position. My turn 1, I don't do a whole lot either, to be entirely honest. What I do is I take the Taurox, which was initially deployed something like this. The guys hop out, so the Ogryn Bodyguard and friends are sitting here 1.1 inches away back from the edge of the wall. And the Taurox moved over here to something like this. Okay, the whole point being that even if you 6-inch drop over here with something, it needs to have fly if it wants to have a chance of charging into the Ogryn Bodyguard unit at all. And even then, I don't even know like if a Bloodthirster fully kills the unit, simply because it's just toughness 6. I got a 4-up invul, I've got a 4-up feel no pain, so like maybe I don't even die then. But the Taurox just chills here and makes it really difficult for Nicholas to do anything about this objective. I have 12 OC on it. He's going to struggle to do anything about it. And then with Kairos just hanging out here, like in the open, I was able to put the Scout Sentinel and like, I think it was a Hellhound and like 2 tanks just like right here in the middle of the board in order to all shoot at Kairos here. And while I didn't kill Kairos, I brought Kairos down to 4 wounds. Now, you guys are probably already looking at this and thinking, trading almost all of Kairos Fate Weaver for a couple of wounds on a Scout Sentinel is not a very good trade for the Demons player, and it's not. I also drew Assassination turn 1, but because I had already gotten my CP from something that Creed did, I was able to hold on to Assassination as well, because I could still discard it for free at the end of my opponent's turn, and now if Nicholas comes out to play, then I'm going to get 5 points on Assassination, because I'm going to kill at least one of these demons. If he doesn't come out to play, then I can still discard at the end of his turn and still draw 2 new cards. So I leave Nicholas in a position where there's like no real winning plays. But then Nicholas just gives me his army in piecemeal. So on this turn, Scarbrand ends up dropping over here. Kairos comes out and gets into a fight with the Scout Sentinel. The Beast of Nurgle comes out to try and out-OC me on this point. And the Great Unclean One, which had advanced like here on turn 1, comes out to around here. And I think it ends up getting a charge into a Vanquisher that I had parked over here. Unsurprisingly, 2 rounds of Kairos Fate Weaver do in fact kill the Scout Sentinel. And Scarbrand does in fact kill this Taurox. However, a couple of problems have immediately arisen. It would be hard for me to better have selected the units that Nicholas killed on turn 2 in exchange for a couple of greater demons. If I could just pick what pieces of my army are going to die in exchange for this, it's probably going to be the Taurox, the Scout Sentinel, and maybe the Death Riders that just don't do anything into his army. They don't do any damage. They're going to stand in front of something that doesn't have fly, and that's probably the extent of their interaction with the game. And so on my turn 2, I end up killing Scarbrand, I end up killing Kairos, and already we're rapidly approaching a part of the game where Nicholas just doesn't have an army to play with. As he goes into turn 3, he's in complete desperation mode because I've already denied him off of his natural. He's only scoring a 5 on turn 3, which as the player going first is disastrous. On his turn 3, Be'lakor comes in here. I don't remember exactly where the Bloodthirster went, but I ended up missing a charge wherever it went. And when Be'lakor came down here, I had a Lemanar's battle tank somewhere here that overwatched when it dropped, and I did like 8 wounds to Be'lakor, like when he drops. Like I just did a huge chunk of his wounds just right off the bat. And then on turn 3, I cleaned up the rest of his greater demons. The Great Unclean One died, the Be'lakor died on my turn 3, and the Bloodthirster also died on turn 3. So in the bottom of 3, going to turns 4 and 5, Nicholas was just out of units. He had, I think, Fleshhounds and Plague Bearers going into turn 4. And that was it. Like, both Beasts of Nurgle had died, all the Greater Demons were dead. It was literally just small scoring pieces, which he could potentially pick up if he wanted to. This game ended up being pretty one-sided, as you can expect. It ended up being a 96 for me to 49 coming in for Nicholas. And I kind of talked to him a little bit at the end of the game as well to kind of talk about, like, hey, what did he do wrong? Because his next game, he played into guard again, and he did win that one. He ended up going 3-1 at the event. But I basically told him a similar thing, right? Into some armies, you need to be okay with your opponent scoring maximum primary on turn 2, especially if you can't do anything about it. Dropping Scarbrand over here, knowing that he's never going to kill these guys, he's never going to auto-see me on that point, means that Scarbrand killing this Taurox doesn't actually accomplish anything for him. It doesn't change the score in any material way. And it also just leaves Scarbrand in a position where he's going to die on the next turn. Same thing with Kairos. Kairos doesn't need to come out and attack the Scout Sentinel on turn 1. You need to make sure that you're using Bellacor's aura to its maximum effectiveness, because he's only blown up 18, and on tipping point, you're not that far away from each other, so you will be able to shoot basically down the middle if you let me. But basically what I said is if you're trying to play an army like this, where you've got a lot of invulns, but your opponent just really outdamages you, is you need to pick a turn to all in. It's usually not going to be turn 2. I was really expecting Nicholas to all-in me on turn 3. Just look for a spot where I hadn't deployed as many tanks. I wasn't going to be able to put as many shots into a certain part of the board, and just try and overwhelm that side all at once. He is Demons. He can pick things up at the end of my turn, so anything that I've left untouched or anything that's not in engagement range is just going to be able to move somewhere else in the board. He has that mobility advantage against me. But because he gave me his army in a couple of different pieces, letting me kill 2 demons on one turn and 3 demons on another turn, ends up just meaning that he's not able to do a whole lot against my army. So if you're forced into a position where you need to make something happen, you have to do it all at once. You cannot do partial go turns. If you want, I have a video about that. Maybe I'll remember to put it up in the description or whatever. For round 2, I end up playing up against James Lee and his Blood Angels Liberator Assault Group, and this is a pretty normal MSU Blood Angels style of list if you're used to seeing them. It had the Blood Angels captain with the sustained 3 once per game, like go crazy enhancement, a chaplain with Speed of the Primarch, which I'm not sure what it does, chaplain with Jump Pack, Commander Dante, lieutenant with combi weapon, 1 unit of Assault Intercessors, which are joined to the Smash captain, an Impulsor, 2 units of 5 Assault Intercessors with Jump Packs, 2 Ballistic Dreadnoughts, 1 Blade Guard Veteran squad, 1 unit of Infiltrators, 3 units of 3 Sanguinary Guard, 2 units of Scouts, and 1 unit of Vanguard Vets with Jump Packs. There's a lot of Move 12 in here. There's a lot of AP2 Damage 2 in here. There's a lot of fly. This army has a lot of mobility, and it can kind of, if you use your Rapid Ingresses, well, get to just about any target that it wants to. For this one, we were playing Mission M, which is Purge the Foe on Crucible of Battle. And this was one of the players that I knew going into it was going to be a real game. I was going to have to really push and control. Kind of one of the things that I will generally do when I'm looking at a lot of GTs is, to be honest, I'm at a point in my 40k career where I can outskill a majority of players. And so in general, I'm planning my armies around day 2 or the last couple of rounds of the event where I'm more likely to hit the strong players. This was a game where I thought the Purge the Foe was fine for me, but the layout was a little bit tough, because this one has relatively good staging ruins for any kind of melee army. And because he's so fast and has access to a lot of different targets, he can potentially choose his engagements a little bit better than I could. But this one ended up being a game where the dice had a lot more to say about the outcome of this game than anything I think either of us actually did. So one of the major difficulties that Guard tends to have on this particular deployment and this layout is how easy it is for opponents to stage in here and then charge over it. And because this firing lane is probably the single most important firing lane in the game, this one's also pretty important. You generally have to put a lot of your heavy hitters right in here, or like maybe a little bit farther back. But no matter how far back you are, if you want to be able to move into this firing lane, you're going to get charged. Your opponent is going to be able to charge things. James actually did a lot of really good movement control over on that side of the board. However, one of the things that happened in this game was I ended up going first on Purge the Foe, which already kind of gave me flashbacks to when I played up against Ruben Zhao at the last final table that I made in San Francisco. where going first on Purge the Foe is generally a pretty big advantage because your opponent knows how many units they need to kill in that battle round in order to score kill more. Whereas if you're going first, you're just like, let's see how many things I can kill, how many things my opponent let me have access to. I'm going to try and kill as many of them as I can. But on turn 1, I end up drawing Establish Locus and Bring It Down. And I don't have anything in my army that I really want to go put out in the middle of the board to allow my opponent to just kill it. Because if I score 2 points for Established Locus, but it means that my opponent has something to kill for Purge the Foe, it's a minus 2 point swing for me. My other major thing was I really want to try and get a kill on turn 1. Because if I can, I'm no longer at maybe like an 8-point deficit in terms of expected primary score. I'm only going to be at about a 4% expected deficit, or excuse me, a 4-point expected deficit. So one of the things that ended up happening was James had a Ballista's Dread somewhere in here. And I was able to put one Leman Russ like this, where its barrel was sticking out, and the other Leman Russ was wholly within this ruin, about like this. And they were both able to draw line of sight. One of them was a Leman Russ Battle Tank, the other one was a Leman Russ Vanquisher. And so I took a look at that and thought, if I can kill this Ballista's Dreadnought, it's worth 8 points to me, because I get Purge the Foe, and I get Bring It Down for 4, because it's the new tactical card. And I get lucky. Without shooting any of the multi-meltas, because they weren't in range, the Vanquisher Cannon and the Leman Russ Battle Tank Las Cannon both go through, and I'm able to do enough damage to this Ballista's Dread to just kill it on turn 1. This does a couple of good things. One, it means I now no longer need to respect my opponent's ability to shoot down this firing lane. The Ballista's Dreadnought will never have any effect, and his other one is like over here, where it's probably not going to have a whole lot of say in the game. Like, it can maybe move to here and shoot down here, but I'm not a bad player, so he's not going to be able to shoot down into this pocket where I can hide from him. So I instantly go from having a very strong shooting advantage to an overwhelming shooting advantage. My opponent now has no real shooting in his army other than a couple of pistols, and maybe Dante's pistol just pops off at some point. But then we get to the first time where I scam James on dice. So one of the things that I had done was I had moved my Hellhound somewhere in here. And part of the reason why I did this was I was trying to shoot the Hunter-Killer downrange so I could strip cover from the Ballista's Dreadnought. It was on a 4, and it missed, so it didn't actually contribute to that at all. And this Hellhound being out in the middle was something that my opponent was probably going to kill. However, the downside to that is he's going to have to put out a real unit in order to do it, and the other thing that he's going to have to do is he's going to have this unit in the middle of the board, so I'm definitely going to pick it up on the swing back. And this is where the first scam happens. Now, I don't remember exactly what unit it was that James actually brought out to come try and kill this Hellhound, because to be entirely honest with you guys, I can't tell the difference between a lot of different Space Marine units. Jump Pack Intercessors and Vanguard Vets with Jump Packs and, you know, anything with like that Jump Pack, and some of them have Power Fists and some of them have swords. I can't really tell the difference between. So it might have been Sanguinary Guard, it might have been the Assault Intercessors, it might have been the Vanguard Vets. I don't remember exactly which one it was. But James came out and swings into the Hellhound. The Hellhound lives on, I think it was 2 wounds. And this is huge. One, it was his Gamma marked for death target. So he was going to get 2 points if he killed it. He was also going to get 4 points on Purge the Foe. So there was a 6-point kill that James missed out on by 2 wounds. The other big problem, just as we identified, is that now that he's made this charge, I'm going to kill that unit. I'm going to kill whatever it was that just came out to try and kill the Hellhound. And I'll be honest, that's not really something that I planned. It's just the dice working out in my favor that my opponent now doesn't get 4 points for killing one thing on Battle Round 1. On Battle Round 2, it kind of happens again. So I, of course, kill whatever unit this was. Kill the... I think it had a character. I believe it had a character. And I also kill the scouts that James had come over here in order to tie up some of my vehicles that are over in this corner. So I end up going into this battle round with, I think it was three unit kills. At the same time, though, James, I think it's Dante and Sanguinary Guard, ended up rapid ingressing over here, with the idea that they're going to hop this wall and charge like 2 or 3 vehicles. I think it was like Leman Russ, and then the Dorn was behind. But as soon as Dante and his friends hop over this wall, I go ahead and go for an overwatch against them with the Rogal Dorn. And the Rogal Dorn, even though it doesn't have any access to significant rerolls, I do just have the one built-in hit reroll, and they are still T4 Marines. I think they have a 4-up invul and 3 wounds, but they are still toughness 4. So every one of the oppressor cannon, autocannon, or pulverizer cannon shots that get through will just kill one of the Sanguinary Guard. And what do you know? I killed one of the Sanguinary Guard on the Overwatch, which cuts the unit's like damage by, I want to say about 20%, just gone. Maybe a little bit higher than that, honestly, but it's still a decent chunk of the output of Dante and the Sanguinary Guard. And so when the unit charges in, they leave this Leman Russ, I think it's this one, they leave that one on 1 wound because they were missing a Sanguinary Guard. And because of that, he ends up killing like 2 things. But he ends up killing 2 things, and I killed 3 things. So yet again, on turn 2, I get an extra 4 points out of it. Perhaps the most... This ended up happening kind of again on the next turn as well. The unit of Blade Guard vets, which I think we're staging around here, end up advancing and charging and tagging into my Ogryn Bodyguard unit that was hanging out on this objective. And they don't kill it. They end up leaving the Ogryn Bodyguard on 1 wound, and the medic's still alive. And then on the next turn, after that, my unit of Death Riders, which is hanging out over here trying to deal with this unit, ends up living with 1 horse. And that horse ends up chopping whatever lieutenant or character is still on this objective. So I end up getting a bunch of extra kills throughout the course of this game, and he ends up missing out on a bunch of kills that they come like a turn too late after he's already used too many of the units to try and take him down. Perhaps the single most infuriating moment in this game, if I was on James's side, happens, I believe it's on turn 3. I think it's the Leman Russ Vanquisher, but it's one of the Leman Russes, and my Rogal Dorn here, and Dante is in combat with both of them. And I think there's like 1 or 2 Sanguinary Guard like on this side also fighting with the Rogal Dorn. Or maybe the other way around. I don't remember exactly what it was. But I say I'm going to swing first with whichever tank is only in combat with Dante. Because if I get really lucky and Dante dies, that means my other tank can swing into the Sanguinary Guard. And Rogal Dorns and Leman Russ Vanquishers, or Leman Russes in general, just have the same melee profile. It's 6 attacks on 4s at 7-0-1. If it's a Leman Russ battle tank, you reroll 1s and sometimes reroll all hits. But one of my tanks swings into Dante, gets 3 hits, 2 wounds, and Dante has a 2-up save. And James rolls Snake Eyes for Dante to exactly die. And that was really important, because it meant that Dante was now no longer swinging into whichever tank he wanted to. But it also moved me from a position where I'm pretty sure we were tied on the number of kills for that battle round, where because I killed Dante right there, I now got back into the kill more bracket. In general, I'll be honest, I don't think I've seen a game that was more determined on dice, because James consistently left me with units on 1 or 2 wounds, and then just also got unlucky on his saves and just died in places where he probably shouldn't have. In general, I would say like going into this one, once we knew who was going first, James was probably favored probably 60-40 in the game. But every single dice roll that came through ended up just making the situation worse and worse for him. So he's a good player. I could tell he was moving well. He had a fantastic game plan across the board. It just was not his day whatsoever. And the end score for this one ended up being 84 for me to 68 to James. And so I'm feeling pretty good at this point. James is a good player, and he was playing a very tight Liberator Assault Group list. Like, it was a very strong list overall. And taking down one of these strong players on a map that's probably the worst map of the event for me, going first on Purge the Foe, I was feeling really good. But with that in mind, we have to go on to round 3, where I play up against Blood Angels Liberator Assault Group again. But this is a very different one, because this is a very different version of list, and it's being run by Andrew. So let's go ahead and talk through the similarities. You got the Blood Angels captain with the Smash enhancement, the Chaplain with the same speed of this Primarch, Dante, the Lone Op Lieutenant, and the Sanguinor. You've also got an Assault Intercessor squad, an Intercessor squad which stands on his home instead of the Infiltrators, an Impulsor, 3 units of Assault Intercessors with jump packs, 1 big Blade Guard veteran squad, 3 individual Sanguinary squads, or 3x3 Sanguinary guard, and then Canis Rex. Now, if you look at it, you'll notice that these are not the right points. However, you'll also notice that he was not playing with the full 2,000 according to the app. I don't know exactly what his point total ended up being, but trust me, he was playing a legal list. Now, for our third game of the day, we were playing on Mission A, which is Take and Hold on Tipping Point. Your most basic style of Warhammer in this edition. Now, Andrew made a pretty interesting choice right at the beginning of the game because he decided to put Canis Rex in reserve. So he could rapid ingress him a little bit later and have an opportunity to put it in a position where it could potentially smash one side of the board. But one of the big problems that Andrew's list had is he has no realistic shooting. He has no real way to make me respect firing lanes. He's all melee, and he doesn't have the same kind of ability to trickle units into me that James did and constantly like do all these little bits of trading pieces all over the place because he had Canis Rex, who was just eating up like close to 400 points of his army. Now, Andrew went first in this game. And that's already an advantage for me because this is take and hold, meaning that I should be expecting to score a 15 on primary on the last turn. So if we trade 10s back and forths, I will end up having a 5-point primary advantage at the end of the game. I also have a decent secondary advantage into him because I just have more small units that I can throw around and make them do actions than Andrew does. So Andrew at some point is going to have to force the issue. He's going to have to play the game in such a way that I will just collapse a flank and I will no longer be able to threaten this 15 at the end of the game. And so the game mostly ended up pivoting on two things. One of them, I think Andrew made a bit of a mistake with his Smash Captain because he deployed it like over here and they just kind of spent most of the game just hanging out here, which on the one hand, I understand. This unit just is going to have to advance and charge at some point to try and actually tag something because it's just slow. It moves 6. It doesn't have access to assault ramp out of a transport anywhere. Or maybe it was Blade Guard Vets. One of the units, like one of his relatively large units, was just hanging out back in this corner almost the entire game. But the other thing that ended up happening was on turn 2, I had set myself up where I'd put, I think it was like a Leman's Vanquisher and a Leman's Battle Tank hanging out something like this. And on the bottom of 2, Andrew rapid ingresses Canis Rex over here, where he's not touching the objective. My first thought when I was looking at this was he does need to do something because he had like a unit in the open. I don't remember if it was scouts or what, but there was like a unit here that I could choose to shoot. But it wasn't a damaging unit, so I didn't really need to actually kill it. It was just going to attack things. I think it was scouts. I was not going to be able to kill both these scouts and Canis Rex. And Canis Rex was presenting an existential threat to this side of the board for me. And that threat was that if he got lucky with his shooting here and just killed this Vanquisher, he had a possible charge from the 1 inch away here into this Vanquisher, or this Battle Tank. I don't remember exactly what the charge was, but it was going to be a legal charge that he could declare. And if he hits that charge, kills the tank in shooting, and then charges the next tank, I'm in a world of hurt. So what I decided to do is both these tanks just shot at Canis Rex and took him down to 11 wounds. And remember, this is before the newest change to the Knights, where instead of 26 wounds to start, it's only, I think it's 22 wounds that they start at. So I did half of Canis Rex in just one round of shooting, which is not bad. If the Vanquisher cannon had gone through the invul, because I believe he saved it, it could have potentially just been a dead Canis Rex as soon as it comes in. So it ended up being a bit of a calculated risk that Andrew took, and I understand I did a similar thing up against Arthur 2 at the Charity Cup not that long ago. But one of the things that Andrew said to me during this game was, I'm never getting behind guard, right? He's never going to be able to deep strike something into my side of the board. He's never going to be able to rapid ingress such that he is in my deployment zone. And that ended up hurting Andrew out quite a bit, because on turn 3, when he drew behind enemy lines and established Locust, he didn't really have any units that he could just sacrifice to just go be behind enemy lines or go just stand in the middle of the board, because they were all just going to die for like 2 points, and that was not worth his time at all. But in general, Canis Rex just died on the next turn, and we just kind of looked at each other for the rest of the game. Or if you've ever played games where you would just describe them as a controlled win, like you don't need to do anything super fancy in order to set yourself up to win the game. You just need to make sure your opponent doesn't have any outs to outplay you. That's what this game was. As soon as Canis Rex was gone, there were no real ways for Andrew to force a breach to get through the gaps in my armor. And from there, the game just kind of ended. So overall, the game ended up being 94-77. And we talked a little bit about like the team's aspect from this. This was a 17-point win, so it would have been a 13-7. And he said he was pretty happy with that. He was expecting that Blood Angels into guard is generally going to be like a 5-15 for the Blood Angels, whereas I'm a little bit more conservative on my side. I think in general this is supposed to be about a 12-8 for the guard, so maybe it's somewhere in between there. But overall, this was a very controlled win, and props to Andrew for coming out and playing as well, because he just showed up. Apparently, had 2 Canis Rexes. He had one that he was playing with, and another one that another person had loaned, and that was just hanging out in his car. But anyway, Andrew was a great guy to play against. It was a ton of fun, and I ended up being 3-0 at the end of day 1. So I ended up going home that night, and because of the way that they've been doing pairings at this event, where it is just straight pairings down, where you take the number of wins and then you tiebreak by battle points, which I don't love, but by doing battle points, you knew 1 was going to play 2, 3 was going to play 4, and so on and so on. Which meant that I knew at this point that I was going to be playing up against Donald Plummer. And Donald Plummer is a fantastic player, mostly known for his Tau. And he did play Tau at the Edmonton Open like a week or 2 ago. But he was saying he did not feel like he could beat players that he was better than using Tau, even with their most recent changes. And that's part of why he was playing Death Guard at this event. So I went home and I asked a couple of my friends how this list plays. And they basically told me a couple things. One, there's no Lord of Virulence in this army. So all of the bloat drones are just not going to be doing that much damage to Leman Russes because they're only strength 10. And as long as I'm screening him out reasonably well, he's never going to get the number of shots necessary for all the bloat drones to shoot at Leman Russes when they are toughness 10 and he's at least winning on 4s. Let's take a look at what is in his list. He's got a Demon Prince of Nurgle with the Revolting Regeneration, which I think is a 5+ Feel No Pain. 1 Foul Blight Spawn, 2 Lords of Contagion, one of them has an enhancement to do even more damage. Mortarion, Tallyman to give him bonus CP, Typhus. 1 unit of only 5 Plague Marines. 1 unit of 2 Chaos Spawn. 2 units of 3 Death Shroud Terminators. 1 Fetid Bloat Drone. This is the one that can either take like the Flesh Mower or the Flamers. He has the Flamers. 3 Fetid Bloat Drones with Heavy Blight Launchers. These are the crazy missile ones. And then 2 units of Poxwalkers. So my friend said that this is an army that's going to play standard 40k, but be a little bit slow on the other side of me. And most of the game is going to come down to how effectively these Death Shroud Terminators are able to play the game. And that ended up being pretty true. So for round 4, we ended up playing on Mission R, which is Terraform on Sweeping Engagement. And we were playing this on Games Workshop Layout 3. Like I had mentioned at the beginning, I built my list to be good at playing for day 2, or at least to have coin flips on day 2 where we get to see who goes first. Some of the things I want to show you guys about this is if you deploy a Leman Russ Battle Tank here, and you move 10, and you end up with your Leman Russ Battle Tank here, you can shoot basically your entire opponent's like home objective, like on turn 1, if you want to. And then another Leman Russ Battle Tank that goes here and moves 10 is also going to be able to shoot most of this objective. Your home is not very safe. The other thing is there's just sight lines all over the place. Like, here's a major sight line. This is a big sight line. If you move up, you can potentially shoot here, right? Like, here's a sight line, here's a sight line. And then if you move up 10, like, realistically, you're shooting, like, here. Like, there's not a lot of safe places to be on this board. There's a pocket here, a pocket here. You can deploy safely in here, as long as you're not too tall to be seen over the walls. And then there's, like, a safe-ish pocket here-ish that you could potentially be on. But overall, there's just, like, not a lot of safety on this board whatsoever. So my general game plan on this one was to use the fact that it was really, really open, and then try and build a massive primary advantage that Donald was going to struggle to come back from. Luckily, I ended up going first, which meant that I was able to run out and terraform all 3 objectives. Now, terraform is different. You do not score terraform on turn 1, but you can do it such that you don't have to do it on turn 2, and you'll start scoring 1 point for every objective you have terraformed at the end of every turn. So if I have all 3 terraformed at the end of top of 2 and bottom of 2, I can score an extra 6 primary points just by doing that. Now, I don't need to hold all of these objectives all the time in order to score these terraform points. Realistically, I just need to pick 2 objectives in no man's land, hold them for a couple turns, and I'll be able to max out on primary. So my general game plan in this was I had overloaded my army in this area, and I had put a token force over here, and I had like a couple of pieces here. This one could go either direction as it needed to, but I just put 1 Leman Russ over here. This was a Russ, and then I had my Taurox with the Ogryn Bodyguard unit here. And all of this was just going to go over towards this side, which might look like your natural, but realistically, like, neither of them are really a natural on this because they can all be shot from wherever you want. But they were just going to be on the side where I was expecting Donald to overcommit his army to be on that side. And they would just be there for long enough that Donald would have to devote enough of his army over to that side that he wouldn't be able to swing around. Because remember, Death Guard is slow, and anything that is on this side of the board is basically not getting to the other side of the board at all, right? You have this shooting lane, you have this shooting lane, but in order to shoot otherwise, like a unit that starts over here is just never interacting with this objective at all for the entire game. They literally can't. They're just not fast enough. So I ended up drawing Attempting Target and Area Denial at the beginning of the game. So I ended up scoring a very easy 10 points of secondary. I have things on all 3 objectives in No Man's Land. I've done the terraform, and now I'm daring Donald to come fight me. And at some point, he will. And then Donald makes one of the most nuanced plays I've seen in terms of actually using challenger cards since they've come out so far. Because on turn 1, bottom of 1, Donald drew Bring It Down and Engage in all fronts. Now, Bring It Down, I had a Taurox that was just sitting here on this objective. There's a good argument it was supposed to have been the Ogryn Bodyguard unit there instead, but I digress. So, the Taurox sitting here is going to die. If Donald puts any real firepower into the Taurox will die. But he's got a problem. Because he's got a bloat drone over here, a Tallyman, and I think the spawn were here. And then he's got, I think, the 2 rocket drones here, 1 here, something like that, and the plague guys here, and then a couple other things in here. He's already in 2 table quarters. And the new way that Engage in all front scores is if you are in 2 table quarters, you will score 1 point. So I had already scored 5 for Tempting and 5 for Area, which put me at 10 points. Donald drew Bring It Down, which if he killed this, was going to score him 4 points. But he does not want to score a single more point. Because if he's just in these 2 table quarters, he's going to get 1 point, which would put him at 5. And the difference of being at 4 points versus at 5 points is he gets a challenger card if he does not score that 1 point. And so what he does is he CP rerolls Engage in all fronts, ends up getting Assassination, and guarantees himself a challenger card in the next turn. Which I think is a dumb interaction to have in the game. However, the fact that Donald identified it and did it, I was impressed by. Then we get into turn 2. So in order to kill the Taurox, Donald had brought out the Demon Prince about here, and he had 2 of the bloat drones here, wherever they needed to be in order to shoot the Taurox, which they did kill. And I wanted to try and kill this Demon Prince. I didn't think it was particularly likely to happen, but I wanted to put enough of a threat here such that Donald would have to deal with it. So I took the Leman's Vanquisher that I think was parked here, and it moved within Lone Up here to try and shoot. Other than that, I had horses that were here. I think it was a tank on this objective. My Hellhound was hanging out in the middle, and I also ended up drawing Marked for Death, and one of the marked targets was the Poxwalkers or whatever that are here. So I ended up dropping the Aquilons over here to try and kill them. They live with, I think it's 2 models, because he went to ground for free, and the 6-up invul actually saved 1 or 2 models, which was a big deal when he lives with 2. But the bigger point is I've taken up a ton of board space. Donald, in terms of rapid ingress, has this available to him, something like that. And so what he ends up doing is he drops Mortarion with a rapid ingress here, where it's not visible to this Vanquisher, and is only visible to 1 Leman's battle tank here. So my turn 2 goes kind of poorly. I don't get my Marked for Death. I do a little bit of damage to Mortarion. I think I take him down to 8 or something. And I don't kill the Demon Prince. So I basically don't kill any of the things I was actually trying to. And then Donald decides how the rest of the game is going to be played. So around this time, my horses, which are around here, are engaged with the fetid bloat drone with the flamers. And so a couple of interesting things happen here. Because I have a tank over here on this objective, if this bloat drone is, I think it's within 6 is the distance that it needs to be. If it's within 6 of something of mine, I become afflicted. And if I am afflicted, the Death Shroud Terminators can 6-inch deep strike. So when this bloat drone moved over here in order to move within 6 inches of the tank, it gave me these horses and they were able to re-move. And this was probably the most impactful thing they did the entire tournament, was if I did not reactive move these horses, the Death Shroud would have had an opportunity to come in something like here or maybe here, depending on where he chose to go. But my reactive move allowed me to re-string out my horses about like this in order to close off both this opportunity for a 6-inch and this opportunity for a 6-inch. There was nowhere for the Deathshroud Terminators to go that they were going to have a 6-inch charge into the Leman Russ. So what he ended up doing is the Deathshroud Terminators, one of them ended up coming up against this wall, and they would just charge into the horse lane. The other unit of Deathshroud Terminators dropped 6 inches away from here, where they could go into the Command Squad, Ogryn Bodyguard unit, and take over this objective. Donald killed basically everything he touched this turn. The Command Squad and Ogryn Bodyguard died, the Leman Russ Battle Tank over here died, the horses over here died, the Aquilons were left on like 1, maybe 2 models after the end of his shooting, but I was still already setting myself up for a huge advantage. At this point, on turn 2, I held 1, 2, 3 objectives. On turn 3, I am set up to hold the same 3 a second time. Also, I've scored Terraform here twice, Terraform here twice, and Terraform here twice. I'm also set up to score this one 2 more times, this one 2 more times, and this one 1 more time. So I'm set up to have like a 20-point primary advantage going into his turn 3. I have a really big advantage in terms of just my scoring that I've done so far. So I got to talk about the last couple of really impactful moments that happened in this game. So the first one, this bloat drone fell back and charged here into the tank that I had here. And I drew overwhelming force, and I failed to kill this. It lives on 2 wounds. I take another tank over here, and it shoots and charges into the Deathshroud Terminators. To be fair, by this point, I had killed at least 2 Deathshroud Terminators, and then I tank shock with a Leman Russ for, it would have been 7, but it caps at 6 mortal wounds. So I kill 2 Deathshroud Terminators in shooting, I kill a third on the tank shock, and I do 2 wounds to the character on the tank shock. And just the character alone is not going to punch through the Leman Russ very quickly. The other thing I do is I have an Exterminator around here, and it moves over here, and it sacrifices itself in order to kill the unit of Plague Marines here. And I didn't really want to do this because with Morty over here having just killed a Leman Russ, Morty is not that fast. If Morty is just hoofing it over, it's going to take him like 1, 2 turns just to enter the game again. But I chose to sacrifice this anyway because the Plague Marines were in a position where they were close enough to actually threaten the middle objective and actually start doing actions, and potentially, if he got some good charges off, could even get over here or get to my home if they were still alive. And so I decided that letting Mortarion get a little bit closer was worth the amount of pressure that I was going to relieve if the Plague Marines were dead. So I end up losing a couple of points here, or 3 points on overwhelming force because the guy lives on 2. However, the bottom of turn 3 is probably the single most important set of decisions that happen, and Donald, unfortunately, probably has game in hand, but makes one wrong decision. Or maybe not game in hand, but I think he was favored if he had made one decision differently. So, when I had set up to kill the Plague Marines here, which I did, Donald Rapid Ingress Typhus here, somewhere in here. And Typhus then moves onto this objective and stands right about here. I have a Hellhound tucked into this corner, and Donald has Storm Hostile Objective at this point. He also, on this turn, counter-terraforms this objective. And with the Leman Russ hanging out right in here, Donald was not confident that Mortarion was going to kill the Leman Russ on his own. So what Donald does is he sets up all 3 of his bloat drones right in here, and they're set up to shoot at the Hellhound. He also takes the spawn that have been chilling right in here for a while, and they're going to come. The bloat drone that lives on 2 is going to fall back and try and tank shock this to death. He's going to try and kill this Hellhound. But he also really wants Morty to get back into the game. And so Typhus has the ability to do a Brain Blast. He can do mortal wounds to something he can see. It might have an 18-inch range or something, but he can do mortal wounds to something he can see. And Donald chooses to have Typhus do his Brain Blast into this Leman Russ. And he actually does a lot of damage to it. I think he did like 5 mortal wounds to it. And the Mortarion comes through and actually just claps this. However, the 3 bloat drones that are here, they're set up to shoot into this Hellhound, and I pop smoke here. However, the 3 bloat drones are here, ready to set up into the Hellhound as basically their only target, and I pop smoke. And this makes the bloat drones hit on 4s without rerolls because there's no Lord of Virulence, and also gives me cover, which basically counteracts the fact that I am -1 AP, or I am -1 save due to the Death Guard Contagion Aura. And because of this, the Hellhound ends up only taking like 6 damage between all 3 bloat drones. He rolls fairly poorly. The fact that I smoked ended up saving me like 6 hits over the 3 activations. And this Hellhound ends up living on 2 wounds. And this is a really big deal because Typhus here was trying to counter terraform this objective. It also meant that the Hellhound still had the same amount of OC on the point as the 2 spawn and Typhus, which ends up denying Donald at least 5 points because he would have gotten 1 for the terraform going off and 4 points for the storm hostile. It also would have cost me 1 point of terraform. And as you'll see in just a moment, those differences in points is huge. Now, it wouldn't have been close if this drone had just died before. It also would probably have gone in his favor if Typhus had brain blasted the Hellhound. But I got a little bit unlucky, so I lost 3 points. And then Donald got a little bit unlucky and made 1 wrong decision, which ended up putting him in a 5-point hole. The rest of the game was basically us just calculating out what kind of scores were possible. I calculated out around this point that as long as I held this and one of these for 1 more turn, I was going to max out on primary. So I always knew I was going to hold this one. I just needed to hold either this or this. And I had 2 battle shock tests I had to make. So I decided to just spend my insane bravery over here, guarantee that I was going to hold this and max out on primary. And because I made this calculation at this point, it meant that I didn't have to play for real primary for the rest of the game. I did not have to think about it anymore. I could devote my units to go attack Donald, to go reduce his ability to score. And because of that, the Rogal Dorn that was kind of sitting here and just trying to keep him off the center, do maybe a little bit of damage down this way, shoot down range at stuff that was over here, the Rogal Dorn finally came in and just stood in the middle of the board. He rolled a little bit low. I didn't actually end up killing another overwhelming force target. I only killed 1 of the 2 things that the Dorn ended up trying to shoot at. I was supposed to have killed both, but unfortunately I didn't, and I lost out on 2 secondary points there. And from here on out, it was just a matter of mathing out what possible points we could actually get. What we figured out was that if Donald held everything that he needed to, he would need to score 16 points of secondary cards, plus the challenger card. And he only drew 13 points. And so then we took a look. He took a look at like the challenger card, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this gives me like advance in charge." But we're like, that's still not enough points to actually bring the game back. So the end score for this one ended up being 96 to 93. Overall, this was one of the most fun games I've played in a long time. So shout out to Donald for being a fantastic opponent, playing a really driving game and actually making me think the entire time. And also just being really good. Like, he's got a fantastic painted army. He's a fantastic player as well. So I had a ton of fun playing up against him there. And that was the last game of the tournament, actually. I only played 4 rounds at this because what ended up happening at this event was after the 4 rounds, I was the only undefeated player. And so after we came back from lunch, the judge asked everybody, is like, "Hey, we only have 1 undefeated player. Do you guys want to play a 5th round, or you guys want to call it after 4? And of the 18 players that were still in the tournament at this point, 10 of them voted that they were ready to go home and they only wanted to call it after 4. Which I was a little bit disappointed, but ultimately, if everybody just votes to let me win the tournament, I guess I'm okay with that. I signed up for a 5-round event. I only played 4 of them. I won all 4 of them against some fantastic players, and I went 4-0 at this event. And so that's a GT win coming out for your boy. The event was a ton of fun. All of my opponents were fantastic to play against, and I have another GT coming up next week. Now, I still have like kind of mixed feelings about like in my mind whether this like mentally qualifies, but that's partly just like the imposter syndrome that always comes up talking a little bit because I had to beat some really good players in order to get this tournament win. But hopefully I can get another GT win this upcoming weekend, and I won't really have to think about it too much more. I'll have another one of these coming out next week when I go to Cherry City down in Oregon, and so I'll have another video to talk about what my learnings were from that event, how I did, and what you could potentially take into your own games. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.